Prepare yourself to be blown away by the seismic sounds and scrutiny of AFTERSHOCKS Podcast with Chris Aiken and Matt Hartnett.
Cool, man. All right, well, here we go. AFTERSHOCKS number 25, and joining me and Chris on the podcast today, we've got the vocalist from Queens, New York, hardcore metal kingpin, Sworn Enemy, who in 2019 released their sixth LP titled Game Changer on M Theory Audio. Mr. Sal Lococo. Sal, man, what's going on? How you been doing through this pandemic madness going on?
It's been kind of boring, man, sitting around at home. I mean, I've only just recently gone back to work 2 weeks ago, so
okay,
it's been a long time of sitting home. A lot of PlayStation 4 and Netflix.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
That's about all there really was to do, you know.
I know, man. Totally, man. Well, shit. Let's talk, about the band, man. 2019 was a pretty busy year for you guys. A good one at that, obviously. You know, you put out, you put out your first record in what, 5 years, Game Changer.
Yes.
I came out last year in April, and it was produced by none other than Machine Head mastermind there, Robb Flynn.
Oh yeah,
which is
good,
awesome,
good
man.
stuff. Yeah, that was a good time, man. That was fun being in the studio with him.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys probably know him from obviously playing with those guys back a while ago, and when you guys were right?
I don't think any of us knew him personally except for Pooch, my bass player. I think he's the only one that knew him personally. But we all became kind of tight during the recording, so it was cool.
Oh, nice, man. Awesome. And you guys also you toured Europe, right? You did. I know I saw you did a bunch of dates in the U.S. You did like a little run out here with Sacred Reich.
Yeah, that was fun, man.
Yeah, nice. And
great dudes.
Sacred Reich, yeah, man. I love those guys. Great band too. And so and then of course Game Changer, man. That's another quintessential like Sworn Enemy release. I mean, the quality and production really are, top notch in that record, man. And, now you're on M Theory too, right? So you've been reunited with Marco Barbieri there from Century Media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. You worked with him years ago, obviously too. And
yes.
Cool, man. So, I mean, kind of walk us through how like the stars sort of aligned for, in order for you guys to have this pretty awesome, great team behind you on this release.
Well, I mean, meeting up with Marco was just all through our manager, Dimitri. So he's the one that set it up. And he's like, this guy really is into it. He wants you guys. And, like you said, he was at Century Media. So he knew a little history about the band. He knew what we were about. He liked the sound. And, plus it doesn't hurt when you already have a record done and you give it to a record label and they don't have to put out a dime for it. So that kind of helps. True. Any record label would want to have some finished product like that. So, we wound up doing it all. We paid for it all ourselves. We flew out to California. We took care of the hotel rooms, the rent a car. We took care of, the studio. We took care of the engineer. We took care of Robb. Everything came out of our pocket. So tell me a record label that wouldn't want that.
True. Good point. No, absolutely. Good point. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. When I listened to the record, man, too, it was, I was just saying it has that quintessential, Sworn Enemy sound. Obviously it's got that New York hardcore bass with all the thrash and metal elements that surround it, which is kind of, you guys' signature sound over the years. And,
right.
I mean, that album really could have like easily been written and played back, when, in the mid 2000s and stuff. It has that similar sound. And I know you guys have had, the band now, you've had a new lineup for a while now, but it's pretty stable. It looks like, how like challenging and kind of difficult is that to like, especially as a singer and the last original, member of the band, how difficult is that to kind of still maintain that sound when you have a bunch of different band members?
Well, you have to make sure that they run through the catalog and learn the sound. I mean, obviously, everyone in the band now kind of was already into Sworn Enemy, so they kind of knew what the sound was coming in. And me also being there, being like, well, it has to sound like this, or else it's not going to work. So everybody kind of figured it out on Game Changer. Living on Borrowed Time was, when we put that out, we didn't really play much with new stuff. We would just basically, you know, out on the road touring and just getting to know each other. So when it was time to put Living on Borrowed Time together, we were still kind of like not in tune with each other when it came to writing. But, you know, 2019, me, Jeff, Matt, Pooch being together for like 8-9 years now. And, you know, Taekwon being there since 2016. So it really, and he's just an amazing drummer, by the way. And it really, we came together as a unit, and spending all the time that we did in California writing this, it kind of helped. And you know, Rob didn't hurt either, being there telling us that we sucked all the time, lighting a fire under our ass and making us work harder and be better.
No, hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with Matt and maybe with you as well slightly on this. I actually thought that Game Changer stepped back sound-wise into a more hardcore bass sound. And again, it's just one person listening, but I thought the time that you guys had from about, I don't know, As Real as It Gets to you know, to the end of the Century Media run was almost a little more thrash based than having hardcore. And I thought that Game Changer especially really took it back to the Stillborn years when Jasta was involved, and really gave it much more of a hardcore vibe. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. And you could see the progression from As Real, beginning, Maniacal, Total World. There was definitely a lot, you know, but at the time, you know, you're a product of your environment. And when we were doing a lot of touring from 2003 to 2009, we were going out more and more and more with thrash and metal bands.
Right.
Like that was the basis of our touring. We were doing a lot of touring. Like hardcore, for some reason, I don't know. Well, I guess there was some stigma about us that hardcore bands just didn't take us out on tour. I don't know. But we were playing a lot with metal bands, and you kind of like, I guess you hear it so much that you get influenced by the sound of a lot of the bands you play with sometimes. And it definitely, there was a lot more thrashier sound coming out of those later Century records, you know, like the Maniacal and the Total World, definitely. And this record, Game Changer record, we really, I mean, in order for Sworn Enemy to keep putting their foot forward and keep progressing and going on, I felt that we really had to go back to that sound that made us what we were. And we tried to, well, I think we did a pretty good job, but at the time we were trying to write something more along the lines of like a mixture of As Real as It Gets and Beginning of the End. And, you know, of course, obviously throw in Negative Outlook stuff as well. But I think this one, we really hit it right on with this one.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I think just quickly, I think Maniacal was, the most thrashiest for sure. That's my favorite. Right? That was definitely my favorite record, I think, by the band. But I think when, but after that, I noticed the sound started getting more back to the New York hardcore stuff. But I really think that was, and then I think, obviously the last two records continued that as well. But yeah, go ahead, Chris. Sorry,
well, the thing I was curious about, and this is mostly the three records that you did in the Century Media time, I actually love. Maniacal and Total World Domination are amazing. And I really personally, again, this is a fan, but it's also somebody that was in the business at the time as a journalist. Right. I really felt like Century Media kind of dropped the ball with you guys, not purposely, but because it was almost the way Century Media worked, where it was like an assembly line of music. I mean, I used to get these big, thick packs sent to me with 10 promos a day or a week.
And you're 100% correct on that. I used to get those as well. And we would hear from our A&R guy at Century how every day they were signing like 20, 30 different wannabes of like the bands that were big at the time. Like, okay, so let's say for instance, what was it? 2005. Okay. 2006, As I Lay Dying was blowing up. They were trying to get every As I Lay Dying wannabe that they could. Right. whatever was big at the time, they were bringing in, and they killed themselves by signing all of these bands that did nothing. They put all this money into these bands, records, photo shoots, whatever, and you don't even hear from any of these bands.
Right.
Like a year or two later, they were all gone, and we're like, we're still here, guys. Can you help us out?
Right. And it's and I have to imagine that it's frustrating for you because you didn't record in a week. You spend 6 months basically or a year writing a record and demoing it up and putting it together, and that has to be frustrating to see. Well, you're mixed in with 10 other records, and they're putting all their money into Stuck Mojo, because they got on some wrestling show or some shit. That has to drive especially a working harder edged band like yours that makes its whole living off of work. That has to drive you nuts.
If I didn't have to be so PC, I could explain a lot more, but I don't really want to hurt feelings. But let's just say said band headlines tour. We're on the same record label. We are underneath them, making some money. And said band makes tons of money.
Right.
We would play, places packed, going nuts. Said band goes on after us. Crickets, 10 people left. Okay, thank you.
Cool, man. Well, I mean, and speaking of just, the band, man, one of the things I have noticed is you're definitely determined to not let Sworn Enemy fade into obscurity like a lot of hardcore metal bands do. When I look at the bands like History and Timeline, I mean, you start out with those 2 EPs on Stillborn, which obviously I must have been such a great spot to start when you're up and coming. Obviously, starting with Jamey Jasta on that label is a pretty iconic label for hardcore bands. But then you guys quickly, you catapulted right up to Elektra, and you got on Ozfest so fast.
Well, I mean, that's all thanks to Jamey. I mean, the dude really, he's seen something in us. He liked what we had. We were hungry, and he did a lot for us in the beginning. Like, he basically set us up with his management, No Name, and that's how we got signed to Elektra. It's all thanks to him.
Yeah. He and then, like I said, and you guys are already right there now. When you're playing an Ozfest, I mean, you're at the top of the mountain. And that happened pretty. I mean, you guys obviously paid your dues in the New York hardcore scene for a while, but once you did get kind of get going, it really happened real fast for you guys. And of course, you had a nice, steady ride at Century Media there. And then, of course, I know there was a little rough patch after the, you guys kind of, regrouped. I know you were crowdfunding, that record for a while, Living on Borrowed Time. But it's really pretty impressive, man, to see that the type of comeback that you had, because it's real challenging these days, I mean, to stay relevant in the music environment right now. So, I mean, some of those obstacles that you had before after Total World Domination, I mean, were you guys at any point ever in jeopardy of fading, or are you always going to keep this going?
Well, I really was kind of, I felt like I was on my way out. After 2009, J-Rad quit, Lorenzo quit, Sid and Jamin quit the following year, 2010. So it was like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. The only thing that saved it was the drummer that we had at the time, Danny LaMagna, on the Living on Borrowed Time drummer. He was in a band, Suicide City, with Billy Graziadei. He played drums for them. Okay. And his best friend and their guitar tech was Jeff Cummings. So he got Jeff, he recruited Jeff, he recruited Matt, because he was friends with him from the neighborhood. They both lived in Baldwin. So he recruited Jeff and Matt, and he recruited Mike Pucciarelli. And so he basically recruited,
he did all the work.
he did. Well, it was difficult because 2009, 2010, like I said, I was at the end of my rope, and I didn't really know what was going to happen with the band. So I said, look, if you want to continue doing this, you're going to have to step up and do something, because I've been stepping up since 1993, and I'm over it, kind of, in a way. I was burnt out. Dealing with the same guys every day, And you know, especially, I'm sure you guys have heard stories of this band and you know things that that we've done. So it was a difficult situation to deal with. A lot of it. There's too many characters at the time, and I was so burnt and over it. I said, look, take the reins, find guys you want to play. If they're worth for me sticking around, I'll stick around. If not, you know, we'll call it a day. You found these guys. They were very cool when I first met them. You know, they still are very cool. I'm not saying that they're not by any means, but I'm just saying at that time when I met them, I'm like, oh, these guys are really cool. They could play, and they already know the songs. So you know, we stuck it out, and I'm kind of glad that I did. So it worked out in our favor, and we're still going.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And you know, like to me, the band really, it always feel like to me, like you guys. I mean, even though you're a thrash sort of, you know, metalcore kind of band, whatever you want to call it, I always feel like you guys have that New York hardcore sound in its core. You know, maybe it's because I grew up, you know, in New York and the scene and everything. But you know, to me, I think one thing I've noticed is that sometimes, like, you know, Sworn Enemy, the name, I think you kind of alluded to it before a little bit. It gets left out of the conversation when you're talking about great classic New York hardcore bands. You know, yeah, and it really reminds me a lot of like another band that's like that is Biohazard. You know, that's a band that, I mean, it's funny because, you know, you think no one really mentions them in, you know, when they talk about New York hardcore, very rarely. And I think
they were like the real Game Changers.
Absolutely, they totally were. For me, that was the band. And you know, to
me three.
Yeah.
I mean, I when that first Maze record dropped, I was like, look, I just got goosebumps thinking about it. Like that was the greatest for me. They were something unreal, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean those shows were. I mean, those were like dangerous shows. Those Biohazard shows.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
Yes, they were.
That was a no joke, man. So, I mean, do you think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, for one, you guys did sort of like what Biohazard did? There's two things. Obviously, you got signed to a major, and you also progressed to a more metal sound. Which, and you know how it is, man. In New York, you know, the hardcore scene, it's so DIY, and it seems like once you venture outside that hardcore bubble, people start to kind of tune you out, and it's like, well, now you're not really sort of part of us in a way, you know. I mean, why do you think that you guys don't get mentioned enough? I don't really get it.
I don't really know. I mean, I guess it's the cool kids that were on social media at the time didn't find us cool anymore. Because when As Real as It Gets came out, we could do no wrong, you know. Like when we were torn off of that record. I mean, it was obviously a different time, and a lot more people were coming to shows. But when we did Beginning of the End, which before Game Changer, that was my favorite record. I always thought the Beginning of the End was like Sworn Enemy's Rain and Blood. I thought that was, and I thought that I seriously had like delusions in my head that I thought that this record was going to be the be all end all for us. Like, I mean, we were getting like feedback like sellouts, like off of beginning of the end. You seriously calling us sellouts? Meanwhile, the fucking band we got heavier, we got harder. How can we be a sellout? Sellout means we're gonna turn into like some pop punk or some something that's commercial on the radio.
No, totally.
You're 100% right, man. But you know, and I've talked to a million bands about this. The one thing that never seems to work, the great bands do not always have talent. The great successful bands do not always have talent.
Right.
And the bands that for whatever reason don't have or have a lot of talent, just somewhere along the line, just miss out on straight luck. It really is a crapshoot when you look at it as, you know, all the stars have to align. You know, a band like a Biohazard, they just happen to sign a major at the time that Headbangers Ball was huge, and they had just the right look, and Evan had just the right amount of charisma to put him on TV, as well as the sound. It was just every successful band you will ever point to is perfect stormish. And it's funny, we're talking about Biohazard, and we could talk about the guy that I'm pretty sure you know pretty well, Jamey Jasta.
Of course.
that guy should be on the Mount Rushmore of hardcore. As far as I'm, he's every bit as important as a Merritt or Cro-Mags or whoever you want to put.
Well, if you look at it, he helped save the career of a lot of these bands.
Sure.
That were on the brink of extinction. He put a lot of bands on and helped bring them back.
Yeah, and is still one of those guys. He's like that one guy that didn't forget his roots, even though his band is pretty goddamn big. You know, I mean, he still is working with bands, and still, even when he was doing Headbangers Ball, he was always sneaking whatever he could. And he's a good dude, man. I know him personally, and I like him a ton. He's great.
Yeah, he's definitely a good dude. I mean, I never have any ill words to say towards that guy at all, and everything I do tell people about him is always positive and great, because without him, we're not the band that people see right now. So he really had a lot to do with us growing. He helped us big time.
No question, man. So dude, obviously the pandemic really fucks a band, especially a band that puts out a release in 2019, because it really kills this year.
Right.
What does Sworn Enemy do now? I mean, are you guys kind of keeping in contact and writing, or are you just waiting it out and seeing, or what are the thoughts?
I mean, realistically, the way things look right now, people could say that they're gonna tour, but it's not gonna happen. Look at it's spiking again. Nothing is gonna be able to happen until they actually have some concrete vaccine that the fear of possibly getting COVID and dying is out of your mind. You can't. How is a band like, let's say, Five Finger Death Punch supposed to tour? They draw 10,000 people. Can you have 10,000 people in an arena? No, they won't allow it. So I mean, what do you do? How do you can't really tour? What are you going to tour to? Quarter capacity places? You're gonna have an arena that's only, what arena is going to open up to quarter capacity? They're not even having, in sports, they're not even having fans in the stands. It's crazy. It's
and
people have to do like Facebook Live stuff. Just sit in the studio, and you have to pay to watch them perform on Facebook.
Right, and the unfortunate thing for a band, for Sworn Enemy, but for a band like Sworn Enemy, is you guys can't do what you do, even if you try and do social distance and chairs and all. That's not what you guys do. You guys do that. I cannot imagine sitting in the 14th row in a chair going after every song. That's ridiculous.
It's very strange if you actually are in that scenario, because we were in that scenario one time. We were playing with Anthrax about, was it 3 years ago?
All right.
A couple of years back. I think it was 2017, and we were in St. Charles, Illinois. It was a theater. We looked at the place when we first got there. The floor was open, but there were seats everywhere except for like the little front area. Mm-hmm. So throughout the course of the day, they added all seats and chained them all up in that little mosh pit area. And we're like, oh, there's going to be nowhere it was all seats. We're like,
oh man.
Yeah. It's a very tough thing for me to visually see people. I mean, the people that were there to actually see us, they were all standing up and in the front, but you couldn't do anything. There were seats everywhere.
Right.
So it's very tough, but it's always nice when you get to play in front of a packed house, even if they're sitting down. I mean, you play with a band like Anthrax, you're playing to a pretty good crowd.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. Hey, I'm going to just get your opinion now. These days on the hardcore metal scene. I'll be honest with you, I really believe that if Sworn Enemy were like a newer modern band today, I don't think you guys would be allowed to exist just because of lyrical content. That was always very aggressive and high testosterone in nature. I mean, that's the such shit I love. It's that old school 90s, beatdown type of stuff. You know what I mean? Just angry male, angst stuff. Obviously, that's not so much allowed in today's. by today's standards, it'd probably be considered, whatever. I don't even want to get into it, but like I'll just like a song, I Still Hate, songs like that with a little comment about, your sister's backside. I mean, shit, right now, you did something like that on a record, man, you'd have like, you would not be allowed to play your show. You know what I mean? People would be protesting and doing all that shit outside,
It's quite possible.
Even though that's just it was a little shits and giggles type of joke in the song, people take shit, way too literally these days. I mean, what do you think of what you're seeing when you're on tour? I mean, you guys at least are touring with a lot of the more, like, you said, a Sacred Reich, and you guys play the show XL, a lot of those crossover bands, from the late 80s and stuff. But I mean, do you think, what's your take on all that, man? I mean, yeah, like, how do you feel about all that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a different scene today. It's not what it once was. When I went to shows back in the day in the city, when I went to go see bands like Marauder, Biohazard, All Out War, there was always that element of fear. Always. You always had to, you couldn't really stand close to the pit because you were afraid that, somebody was going to knock you out or somebody was going to really fuck you up bad.
It's dangerous, yeah.
Yeah. If I go to a show today, I'm not scared. Yeah. I'm not worried about anything really.
Yeah.
It's if I could stand probably in the middle of the circle and I still wouldn't be worried about much.
Sure. Well, and you know what though, and that entails exactly what has gone wrong with the scene. Not saying that I was never scared, but look how big I am. Of course, I was never scared. But at the same time, it wasn't necessarily only a fear thing. It was a angst thing. It was
yes. That's a better way to put it.
It was a let's unleash this emotion in. Right. And, you go to shows now and it's like the first thing somebody's doing is running to security. Hey, he pushed me. It's like, fuck you. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, I hear you, bro. I hear you. It's definitely changed times.
Yeah. And not for the better. I'll say it. You don't have to.
I mean, there's still those shows from, when you get bands from like the 90s and during that era that play that there's still a lot of violence. You get reunion shows of bands coming back and playing, and you'll see a craziness in the pit and stuff like that. But if you're talking about the newer bands that come out now, that's not what's, I guess it's not important to them, that element of the that kind of went
out
the window.
They got more used to watching it on their phone. To where they don't have that, one-on-one contact. It's not, in my day, I hate to be the old guy in the room, but in my day, you would go to a show like the only show, I'll just use this as an example. The only show I ever got hurt on in any way at was Pantera, Biohazard, Sepultura.
And it makes sense. Look at the bands.
It was just crushing. The pit was going crazy, and I still remember what happened. Sepultura was playing, somebody jumped on stage, they dove off and just hit me on the very top of my head, so my neck got like jacked, right? And I went straight down, and it's the only time ever, and I was a mosh warrior, and it's the only time I ever got hurt. And I'll be honest, sitting here talking about it right now, still top 5 show of all time. Because it was just fun, man. I was like, okay, I'm hurt.
I remember that tour. That was a freaking When I first seen those 3 bands were getting paired up, I was like, wow, that's insane. Biohazard's going to play with Sepultura and Pantera. Yeah. I can imagine the amount of violence that's going to be at those arenas.
And you talk about all 3 of them raising their game because of the other guys.
Of course.
That was my first time seeing Biohazard, and all I had ever heard was Tales from the Dark Side. It was like the only song I even knew at the time at the show. And I mean, they came in and they started playing some of the Urban Discipline stuff, which other people knew. And it was like,
I'm sure as soon as they played like songs like Punishment and Shades of Grey, the place must have went insane.
Oh, It was insane. But that's what's missing these days is I don't think people, the younger crowd, and I don't like to be that guy, I don't like to say that, but I don't think that the crowd that's coming up today or the younger people understand, especially a scene like the hardcore scene. It was much more than the 12 songs on the CD. I mean, I'll be honest, at least for me, most of the hardcore stuff is interchangeable. Not, that you've got your legendary bands that, are legendary, but
right.
A lot of that middle tier band stuff is pretty interchangeable until you see them. And
right.
then once you see them, you really develop an appreciation of if they're really a good band or they're not, because of the way not only they perform, but the way they interact with the crowd, the way they suck the crowd in. I've seen Sworn Enemy, and that's your forte, my friend, is you bring the crowd into the mix. Nobody.
I try anyway. Thank you.
Well, come on, man. I mean, being real, I don't imagine you've played more than 2 shows ever in your life where people just sat there, arms folded, waiting for the next band. I just don't see it.
Except for the Anthrax show.
Well, even that.
Yeah.
Even that, they were all bopping their heads.
Okay. There you go.
I'll be honest. I don't really care if what you do at a show, as long as you're having a good time. I personally, if there's 100 people in a show and 50 of them are doing spin kicks and windmills, awesome. If there's 100 people in the show and there's 100 people in the front of the stage banging their heads, awesome. Yeah. If there's 100 people in the show and they're all clapping, awesome. As long as they're all having a good time, that's really all I care about anyway. It's, everything else is irrelevant. I just want people to enjoy the show. And what I really like is for when people leave and they say, wow, dude, when they talk to their buddies and they say, dude, you missed a great fucking show because Sworn Enemy kicked ass. Exactly. That's what I care more about that. The people that aren't at the show, I can't really care about them. They're not there. But I can care about the 100 people or 50 people or even 10 people. Here's the kind of band that we are, okay? So we're in Indianapolis. I forget which year this was. I think this was like 2014 or 2015. And we're on tour across the states. We're playing a show in Indianapolis. We get to the club, and there's nobody there. Only the club owner. And he's like, yeah, we heard nothing about this show. And we told him who the promoter was. He's like, well, that makes sense. We can go right now to his house. We'll all kick the fuck out of him because he's a piece of shit, junkie motherfucker. And he probably fucked you guys and didn't mention 2 words about the show going on. Or if you guys want, I'll open the doors. We were actually going to leave till 3 cars pulled up and about 14 people pulled out of those 3 cars and were there to see us play. So we're like, oh, man, what are we going to do? Nobody knows the show's going on. And the night before, he had a Hell Yeah show. Sold out. The room, now mind you, the room is 1,000 capacity room. The show was sold out for Hell Yeah. He's like, if we would have known, we would have given out flyers. We could have even given out free tickets to people to come just to see you guys tomorrow, today. So we decided, you know what? 14 people are here. Let's just play. What we did was we played 17 song set list that night, and I gave a shout out to each person in the room. Those people were so appreciative that we played that for 14 people, we did $545 worth of merch.
Wow.
Damn. And I guarantee you every single one of them has bought everything since.
And those people, when we still see them, they still come back and say, thank you for playing that show. Because that's the kind of band that we are, Sure. And I'm sure that there's a ton of bands that would have just bounced and not even fucking worried about anything. But this is the things that people don't know about Sworn Enemy. This is the kind of band that we are. We stayed there. We played for 14 people. How many people actually would go online, talk with you guys and say that they played a show for 14 people? Nobody wants to admit that they played for 14 people.
Right.
I'm not like that. I don't care. I don't lie when people ask me, how was the show? I tell them, it sucked. It was great. Those 14 people were so into it. They spent $545 worth of merch. Each person there bought everything we had.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Well, dude, obviously Game Changer is the album right now that people can get. Why don't we do this, man? We always wrap the interviews up with picking a song from the album. Maybe tell us a quick story about it, and then we'll play a piece of it for them to hear it. So what would you like us to share with them, and maybe tell us a quick story about it?
Why don't you pick? I'll let you guys pick.
From Game Changer? From Game Changer?
Prepare for Payback. I would pick Prepare for Payback. I think it's a great.
Prepare for Payback. Yeah. See, now, I mean, that's a difficult one to actually, because I didn't write the lyrics.
So you got to pick then.
So I got to pick.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I don't even remember the songs on the record.
just pick one that you wrote lyrics for.
How about I got to look up all the songs first. How about that? Let's see. Prepare for Payback, Seeds of Hate Coming Undone, Justified, DOA, Fragment of Broken Life, All the Modern Man, Selling a Dream. Oh, here's a funny topic.
All right.
So, not many people in hardcore bands, and I'm not saying that we're a religious band by any means, but not many people in hardcore bands, write sort of in that vein, like religious topics and shit. Yeah. So that was basically what the Fall of Modern Man was about. Like, if you read those lyrics, you'll see that, there's a lot of references to like, demons and Satan and shit like that. But basically what I was writing about was the demons within ourselves, and we need to better ourselves. And, if you look at the world around us, how fucked up shit is, and we create our own hell.
Right.
So basically, I wrote that song, and there's a lot of underlying meanings that I put in there, and I like to do that. I like to make people think when they read my lyrics, and it's kind of fun. It's like I was always good at English classes. Probably one of the only classes I was good because I sucked at math. So I was always a good writer, and doing stories was my thing, and that's why I guess that's why I kind of ventured towards. Because when I first started, I really didn't like singing. Really? I was a drummer in junior high school. I was the drummer for the band.
Well, I think one of the things about your voice too is you can hear like every lyric that you sing. It's not like, oh, what was that? Well, I couldn't hear that. I got to go look it up. You can usually like make out the lyrics without having to look up the actual lyrics, just from because it's so heavy, it's so loud, but you can still make out every lyric, which I think that's kind of unique. That's hard to do.
That's what I was always very proud of, that I could still remain, well, I don't know if you want to call my voice hard, because it's not, because I got really more of a higher pitch.
Higher pitch, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I always had like that rasp, high pitch growl that you could still comprehend. You could still understand words that I say, because I always wanted that not to be a problem. Like, there's a lot of bands out there when somebody's screaming, it's like, and in me, even being around the music for so long and knowing what people are saying, I still like, what the fuck did he say? Yeah.
No, you're so right, man. Well, let's let people get a taste of it off of Game Changer. It is The Fall of Modern Man. It is Sworn Enemy right here on AFTERSHOCKS.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to AFTERSHOCKS. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.